So welcome everyone back from our holidays, and promised to be an exciting beginning to the year. Those who might be tuning in and looking for our plan for the end of this week, Friday, we'll be discussing that later, so stay tuned. We have a number of consent agenda items. I have a motion to approve those items. Trustee McMillan, seconded by Trustee McCray. Cast your vote online. Okay, that passes. Just as a note, I probably should have mentioned this before we passed that we will be breaking for a private session at some point this evening when the team of administration that's working on the plan for Friday has something to share with us, and then we'll be making a public announcement after that. And those that are part of that are those empty chairs over there. So this side has a lot of work to do to keep up tonight. I'm sure that Anne, you will keep you will do us proud. Any declarations of conflict of interest? All right, seeing none. Did you want to declare one, Trustee McAllister, for the?
Yes, I would, please.
Okay.
Sorry, I was ahead of myself.
The labor update. But you will, that item has a range of issues, and you'll be returning to discuss take part in the discussion about extracurricular.
Thank you.
Motion to move into committee of the whole for discussion items 4.01 and 02. Moved by Trustee Richard, seconded by Trustee McAllister. Go ahead and all right, that passes. Thank you very much. So our first item in our committee of the whole is our Service Excellent Charter 47. I'm pleased to hand the floor over to retiring Superintendent Linda Lumsden and Sarah Crawford. Sarah, are you going to, okay. Sarah's going to join you?
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Okay, the floor is yours.
Good evening, trustees. This I did present to you back in the spring about this charter, and basically I'm going to, Sarah and I are going to fill you in as to what has happened since then, because it's been a while since we presented. We'll do a quick little trip back through memory lane, but a quick one, and then we'll proceed forward with what's happened since then. Charter C-487 was struck in July of 2011. Again, I think many of you are familiar with the story that our director, David Thomas, came to me and said, you know, I think this is a direction we need to go in. I think we really need to look at the service in our organization and how we're interacting with people. I'm not sure we all know how to do that well. And Linda, I'd like you to embark on this, and I have no idea of really where you're going to go and what you're going to do with this, but I'll always be thankful. And I guess as a soon-to-be retiree, I am reflecting a lot on my career, and I'll always be thankful that he did trust in me to take this on, and also gave me comments like, you need to wander in the wilderness a bit. And what I found when I wandered in the wilderness is, oh my goodness, there is a whole body of knowledge out there about service. And somehow we as educators haven't really dabbled into it. We may call it other things. We may talk about things like parent engagement. We might talk about things like student voice. But once you begin to look at what's out there, there's an incredible body of knowledge that we believe, and I think we can demonstrate, that translates very well to the work that we do, both in terms of our interactions with people at every step of the way, and also in terms of the processes that we use in all of our work to make sure that we're serving our customer well. And one of the things that we determined very early on, and it's not without controversy, is that really when we talk about the customer in an educational organization, we're talking about our students. Ultimately, that's whom we serve. Now, we know that their parents are really a proxy along the journey, because we certainly know that as children grow and thrive, they need guidance and they need their parents along the way. But as they approach secondary school, they become much more independent and begin to make choices on their own, and really do share their voice with us about what's important to them. But it is something that we, again, tackled early on, and we're very, very convinced that it aligns very well with our board's focus on students. And we believe the following. We believe that a focus on service excellence, 100% satisfaction with the educational journey, really creates the conditions needed to achieve the 90% graduation rate. And you see our goals on the slide, and you also see a picture of our vision. We've detailed that in the report that you received. The report itself is not lengthy, but there's all kinds of documentation in terms of the appendices, and I do encourage you to take a moment to look at that when you do have a chance. We believe there's a wealth of knowledge to be shared. And this basically captures the journey that we've traveled, and it started again with the research, where we really went out and looked at either through face-to-face interactions or virtual interactions, through whether it be web-based or traditional books, if you will, on what's out there, what are the effective practices in terms of service. We then went out, and many of you are aware of this, we talked about it in the spring, we went out and interviewed a number of students, a number of parents and staff to really ask them, if we have a culture of service excellence, what's that going to look like? What do you think is important? What do we need to be demonstrating and showing to others? And we collected all that data. That helped to inform our vision. We also had a summit where we brought all of our variety of staff groups together, parents and students, and that summit also helped to inform the creation of our vision. And when you look at the circular vision, it encompasses really so many areas of what we do strategically in our organization, and really gives us some guideposts as to follow. So once that was created in September, in the months of September to December, we've been quite busy with our action teams. And again, we went out to employee groups, and we had nearly 40 people who came forward. You'll see some of them sitting in the back in the lovely Service Excellence t-shirts. Again, we couldn't have done it without them, because really bringing different employees together, you get the rich perspectives from each individual role. And it was not only informative to us, but these individuals have made some great connections and have learned a great deal through the process. One of the things we wanted to make sure, though, when we met with our action teams, is to say to them, there are terms of reference for the work. You're coming together, we're asking you to give us your input, but ultimately the decisions that are made, the actions that you recommend, ultimately will be operationalized. Decisions will be made by the senior team. And we have the quote below that we work best when we have fences but not tethers. And that's from the very famous Upper Canada principal, Gary Palmer. And so basically, we worked very hard to ensure that the action team members were well prepared to develop the proposed actions. I'm going to get rid of this little, I don't need that there. And we did that by the following. We really asked them to think, We wanted them to work with us because they had individual employee perspectives, but we also said it was very important that they come together to realize that what they were going to suggest had to be a system suggestion. They had to go beyond their own individual perspectives to really look at what could help an entire system. We also had them revisit the data of the interviews that we did in late winter of last year, and they looked at that data, in particular the questions around what are the actions that the school board should take in order to create a culture of service excellence, and they looked at those and analyzed those. And then they looked very intently at the vision, all of the components of the vision. And this comment, I think, is demonstrative of one of the things that that one individual took away from it. And basically, that whenever we make any decision in our organization, whether at the school or at the board office, we should always ask, how will this affect our students? And we asked them too, and we did this in our interview process, and we did this with our members of our action teams, is to really imagine what it might look like in the future, what that desired state might be when we are highly regarded for our service, when exceptional customer service experiences abound throughout our organization. We're acknowledged by our students and their parents, staff, and the community at large for our outstanding student achievement and extraordinary service delivery. And we have a common understanding and language around what service excellence looks like to our customers. And we know this because we're hearing this great feedback everywhere. So we asked them to imagine that desired state and then ask, how could we get there? What would be the things that we would need to do from 2012 to 2017? And really what they came up with, I would say, center in these 4 areas. Of course, anytime you're moving forward in a system, you can't ignore the leadership piece. And we looked at something called servant leadership. And servant leadership means that both formal and informal leaders are provided opportunities to excel. And that's just one example of that. They were very, very definite about the need for there to be some learning in the system for all employees about what it means to deliver great service. And an example of one of their recommendations was that customer service become an integral part of all employees' skills and competencies. One of the things that we found was very, very powerful is when we asked employees to recognize employees whom they worked with, who they felt demonstrated excellent service. And hundreds of people were recognized in our system. And one of the, I guess, ahas for us is that perhaps people were hungry to do that. They were really inspired to recognize their fellow employees. And so out of that, one of the examples of an action was employees are regularly recognized for customer service successes. And in the area of communication, an example of an action was Upper Canada actively seeks and responds to feedback and communicates with our customers. So the charter is not finished, but it's coming close. Its end date is June 2013. That doesn't mean that there isn't more work to do. Really, the work will be over years ahead of us. But really, this charter was meant to establish the foundation, and we're really, I would say, pretty close to accomplishing what we need to. There are some things yet to do. But again, as you look through this list, and I won't go through all of them, you can see some of the things that we've been able to deliver on. Some of them were promises that we had in the charter. Some have been really unexpected deliverables. When I look at the 4th bullet, inspiration and promotion for schools and departments to begin the work of service excellence. It's been quite a surprise to me at how quickly, really, the words service excellence are becoming part of the lexicon of our organization. In my office the other day, I was sitting and there was a meeting going on about kindergarten registration and welcome to kindergarten. And I heard the word our customers over and over again. I heard them say, We need to ensure that we provide good service, that we make it easy for people to register, that we make it understandable, and all of that. And again, we wouldn't have heard that a year ago. It's really captured the imagination. I can go through a list, and you have it in the report. There have been changes in our help zone in terms of a customer service survey. There's been changes in human resources in terms of a principal VP satisfaction survey. There are many even beyond that. Again, kindergarten would be another one, and that was an unexpected outcome, that people just became quite excited and decided to move in that direction. And again, the last bullet, it's been quite interesting to me, and we're going to make sure we do follow up with the report and send it to all of the organizations whom we've connected with, who were very, very interested. And in fact, some folks in the private sector said, you're brave going in this direction, but we're very encouraging. And here's what's yet to come. Again, I've been privileged to be able to kind of get this going, but it will certainly go beyond me. And Sarah is going to be the lead for the implementation phase of this charter. And really, we have several areas that continue to need to be completed. We're going to look at those 4 key action areas and really begin to decide which ones are going to begin and when. In particular, the plan for learning. Sarah and Tim Martin from IT were away on some learning experience around web-based training. We're looking at how we can use web-based training to get service excellence learning experience out to all employees. And that's just one thing that needs to begin, and that will be creating the content and the scheduling, because the desire of this charter is that all employees will have that learning experience. Again, formalizing the liaison with departments and areas to implement required changes. There are many actions that have been suggested and many components to the vision that will change the work that we do, and will also support some of the work that has been going on already. And one of the things that we're quite interested in, and if you remember, Excellence Canada is the organization that has that our wellness charter has been connected with, and they've done such an outstanding job. They have really suggested to us that we would really be a good candidate to look at Excellence Canada and the recognition and the standards that they can provide for us. Again, we're really looking at a culture change. It takes time. But again, and I look at this quote and I'll read it to you. I hear principals saying things like, I could do that, but I wouldn't be demonstrating service excellence if I do. And that is proof that this work is beginning to stick. And I just want to be clear that that supervisory officer is not named Linda Lumsden. Actually, the person's initials are David Coombs. So if you have any questions, Sarah and I would be happy to entertain them.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Trustees? Trustee McCray?
Linda and Sarah, I think it's a great document. Certainly you've done an awful lot of research in it, and I think it's very timely in lieu of what is happening in the public education sector right now with such a volatile climate. I think education is becoming extremely competitive, and people are looking around for the best customer service that they can get, keeping their children in mind. I think it's very student-focused, as you've already mentioned. I like the whole notion that you've taken from a positive perspective rather than, I think the quote you use is fixing broken spokes or broken wheels, because that's the best way to get the creative juices flowing and solutions coming out rather than it turning into a complaining session. I do have a couple of areas, and I'm hoping that these will come out of the Service Excellent, and that is some feedback from our communities, whether they be focus groups and community partners, because I think perception is everything, and I think it only takes it takes so very few people, but if they're in a leading role, to say something negative, and they can persuade so many others. I also would like to suggest that you involve PIC and school councils. Now, I know you have some. One suggestion I might have is that the trustees sitting around the table here work with their school councils to look at this document and, you know, make suggestions and recommendations as to how we could service the individual communities, because they are all different in terms of service delivery, and also our student trustees. But I think it's great headway. Great job.
Thank you, Trustee McCray. Okay, well, I have a list from Trustee Karkner that she forwarded to me. So as trustees are getting ready for making comments or questions, I'll intersperse the discussion with these. So this is from Carol, and she asks, it appears that this charter has been completed. Who will be following the action plans put in place through this charter? And I think you touched on that it would be Sarah.
Yes, it would. And again, I would say we're 2/3 of the way through. If you look in detail at the charter, you'll see the items that are yet to be done. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody has a question, just put up their hand. Second question from Trustee Karkner. Do we feel that the feedback from 27 parents is sufficient to make a conclusion that this service excellence plan has been well communicated to all stakeholders?
There's still much communication to be done, Chair Petersma. Really what we were doing at that point was really seeking the input from parents, and when you look through the report, we had quite we reached out quite far, but again, our parents are quite busy. We even asked a parent group, and I think you were at that group, Chair Petersma, and we said, okay, what's the best time? And they said, well, a Saturday in April, because hockey's over and the soccer fields are too wet. So, but even with that, we didn't get the parents that we wanted. However, because we were interviewing parents and it took all the time that was required, we did get some very, very rich data from the parents, and we did have parents involved in our summit as well. And those suggestions came forward, and what the suggestions that came from parents were very instrumental in terms of the work of the action teams as well.
Okay, Trustee McAllister, you must have a question, comment.
I have a comment in that I strongly believe that customer service is important, and if you succeed and if we succeed, we as trustees will have succeeded as well, and the board will have promoted solid education in Upper Canada. So it's really all a question about relationship building, from what I can see. And I'm wondering how our new communication plan is going to dovetail with this notion of the future excellence.
Director?
First of all, it's going to be critical as we roll out what's going to happen here is the communication relationship management plan as we take a look at it. And although it's early, the fact is you're going to see much of this moving over towards that particular division that's going to be part of, actually it's going to come into a couple of parts. One, communication is going to pick up a part, but the fact is we still have a significant implementation issue before we hand it off. And then once we do have the implementation where this becomes a part of our practice, we're going to hand off another significant portion of it to HR, so that if you're a brand new employee, once we've had the thousands of employees who work for us, everyone trained, and this is why you heard Linda speaking about, is that we're going to have a point where we know that every single person has been trained. Then we'll move to 1.2 of the training of how you build upon something. Just say we're done, the service excellence, we're done, and I'll move to the next issue. This is ongoing for whenever you're dealing with the public, so you go through. What's going to happen, HR will pick it up. What's going to happen there is that as they have induction things that employees have to go through to work for us, so they will have to go through an induction on this is what service looks like for our board, this is how we treat one another, this is how we treat the public, this is where it's gonna, we're not there yet either, but these are places that we're gonna be going to with both of these, and so that a significant chunk will be picked up in communications, and then another chunk will be picked up in the whole aspect of HR with ongoing new employee. And then also, what I see happening here in my talking with Linda about, you know, we better spend a lot of time learning about this before we start preaching about it as we go through, is that once you have created a standard, then how do you ensure that you continue to be, as David McDonald has pushed us to say, that you are setting the standard for the province for that? Does that mean we'll have ongoing reviews by different, are we hitting our measures on the different, and then we also know, the piece that's good, is that different people have different clients they're serving. I may be right on the front line and serving the most important client in our board, that's kids, and that's wonderful that you have that. But we have other people who are sitting in the back of the room that are 2 and 3 places removed from serving kids. Who are they serving? And we have people in the payroll, we have people in HR, they're serving people who serve others. And that's sometimes a very different way to serve, motivate, and inspire as we go through. So those are things that we're working on implementation at that particular time. That may even be a part that spins off and rolls off into leadership, our leadership training piece as we go through. So as Linda said, we're new at this, we're getting at it, we're setting some standards, but for us to even begin to think we've just scratched the surface on really understanding this, and that's where we're gonna go.
Thank you.
Trustee Buckland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I like the idea in a generic way, but I find customer service a little crass or bald perhaps, because I think of the customer as someone saying, well, yes, I have a need and I'm willing to pay for it, and if I don't like the product that the merchant is selling, then I get my money back. But in the student-teacher relationship, we're so far beyond that. You know, the teacher goes into the classroom for the first time, and the students are there. You know, she didn't pay for the students to get there, they didn't pay to get there, but then you must take on some kind of adventure, a development, a physical, a social, spiritual, psychosocial. I mean, all of this has to go on. So I'd like us to come up with another term. I mean, the crux really is education, and it's teacher-student. It's not customer-merchant. So I wonder if there's a comment on how you battled with that terminology.
Through you, Chair Petersma. And, you know, Trustee Buckland, I struggled with that for a while. And then I picked up a book by Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker was a very, very famous businessman. And later in his career, he got quite involved with not-for-profit organizations. And I was reading through his book. I think it was the book, 5 Questions You Need to Ask About Your Organization. It was basically, one of the questions is, who is your customer and what do they value? I would have loved to, you know, Peter Drucker would be someone you'd like to have over for dinner if he were still alive. But anyway, he said, ultimately, in the not-for-profit, and he spoke about schools, he said, basically, your customer is the person whose life is changed by the work of the organization. And he said, call them clients, call them students, whatever. I'm real comfortable with the term customer, but because it talks about that exchange of value. And he felt, and so at that point, I just thought, here's a really smart man. I think he's got it figured out. And, you know, do I foresee that we're going to have teachers call their students customers? No, I don't. I think it's more of a stance, more of an obligation, and again, because there's so much out there in terms of a body of knowledge, I just, once I kind of cross that path and just jump forward, the term, I'm very comfortable with the term.
I think if I might just add, you know, Trustee Buckland, one of the interactions that I used in a couple of the presentations that I was involved with was a story about an interaction between a new parent in a kindergarten program, and they had registered their child, and somehow the child's name didn't get, and the email address of the parent didn't get added to the list. And so time went on, and the parent didn't receive any communication. And eventually, there was a phone call that came, and the suggestion to this parent was that, why aren't you returning your email? Do you need help with your email? And rather than looking at the list and making sure that their name was on it, there was a move right away that the parent didn't know what they were doing. And the parent, kind of went through, was embarrassed that they hadn't responded and kind of thought that they had missed something. So they went back through their email and phoned the school and said, I did not have that information. And then it later came out that their name hadn't been transferred from the paper onto the email list. And at no time was there an apology or, a note from the principal saying, this is not the way we run our school. There was just kind of, well, okay, here's the information. You're late, by the way. You haven't filled out the forms. And that, to me, I know what you're talking about, that the teacher-student relationship may be challenged to characterize it as customer service, although I think Linda did a great job answering the question. But those types of interactions happen every day in our school and in our school communities with our schools, and those are the ones that people often set their opinions on. Anyway, the most disturbing part of that whole interaction was, and I think this sort of forms a basis for a question that I'm going to ask you, Linda, is that when I asked the parents about that, I said, because I only came across the information sort of accidentally, that why didn't you kick up a fuss? And their response was, well, I really didn't expect anything more. And to me, that was a problem. We should, as a parent, as a community member, you should expect more from the school system. So my question to you, Linda, based on that, is how do we get feedback from our parents about our customer service when their expectations are so low? And is there, how do we encourage parents to expect more from the school system?
It's quite interesting, and I can only really, Chair Petersmere, look at some of the interactions that we had with parents. And we didn't have a large group of parents for our Saturday session, but there were a couple parents who arrived and were really, and Trustee McMillan, you were there, and they arrived and they were angry. They were going to come to tell us about what they were unhappy about. And I think when we really started with the question, and I think this has been helpful all the way, and I think if we can bring our parents to think in this way, we asked them to describe a time when they had exceptional customer service. And we didn't specify that it was in the school. We just asked them to specify that. And as soon as people start to think about that, there are some characteristics that unfold, and we have 6 qualities that have been identified for service excellence, but I think if you went to any organization and they picked 6, they'd be awfully close. I think we just need to help our parents to see that we want to be a service organization. And as I experienced, and Sarah, I believe, experienced too, every time we interacted with any group and we asked them to think about that, people began to see it everywhere. And I think when we begin to talk about it, our parents will experience it in other places and say, oh, this is what I want to happen in my child's school, I think. But again, we're really looking at if we're looking at a cultural change in an organization, we're also looking at a cultural change in communities. And I guess my aspiration would be that it isn't you get what you pay for, you get what you deserve. And that people aren't really technically paying for the service with us, but it should be so great that they would pay for it if they had to.
Trustee Buckland, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I think, coming back to your specific example, I mean, you've got lack of courtesy and bad manners. Now, maybe that's endemic in a large organization, I don't know, but I'm sure that, I can't think of a school where they wouldn't have better care for individual students.
Okay, Trustee Garrow.
Yeah, through you, Chair, thank you. I found, there are a couple terms that really struck me, and of course, in the beginning, looking at the customer service, but looking at it a business model sort of thing, and seeing who our customers are, what the product is, and that, and reading the report. I think what has happened here is that you have made a bit of a shift, and you're explaining a shift to really raise the standards throughout the organization. And Director Thomas spoke about standards, and that's what I wanted to state, that really this is what it is. And I know that there's a plan, and I think, Sarah, by taking that plan, implementing it, it's really raising the standards. I went to a community up in Nova Scotia, member two, and they had an ISO. They become an ISO community. And I go, you know, when I read into that, I go, it's incredible. Because what they did was they raised the whole community standards about leadership, about productivity within an organization. And what are they doing? What's their organization? It's a First Nation. And they raised the standard. And I thought, you know, this is a stepping stone towards that. And it's great stuff.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Trustee McPherson.
Partly in response, and then I have a question. The way to win customers, and this I experienced firsthand when I began working retail, was simply excel at the unexpected. In other words, as Greg says, if the parent did not expect anything more, then we have to learn how to deliver more even when it's unexpected. Simply give people an experience that they did not expect, and you will win them over. Now on to my question. In the document, we talk about customer service and service excellence, but nowhere do I see the phrase customer satisfaction. Now, that is sometimes an elusive target to hit because you cannot please everybody all the time, but I was just wondering if any thought was given to what paths we would pursue along those lines.
Superintendent Lonesome.
Through you, Chair Petersma. One of the things that, and Sarah will be a great assist in this because Sarah has been planning and research with us. She also has a background in marketing communications, which I didn't know about. But she's quite excited to begin. There are lots of ways out there to measure, to determine what the satisfaction would look like. And again, we have our vision, so we have some things to work with. But we are just beginning to dabble in that. That would be connected with our communication department as well, because how would we hear how people are feeling about the service that we provide? So it's pretty well uncharted territory for us, but it's definitely a place we need to go.
Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. Just with respect to the comment about student being the customer, and I'm fearful of that, and I think Chair Petersma alluded to it to some degree. I think, you know, that there may be an issue that the student is a customer. However, there are more customers within the equation, and I think if we stop in the statement that student is the customer, people will tend to forget about going beyond that level. Many would ask the questions, if we believe that the student is the customer, that because that's our main job, wouldn't a majority of these things have already been done, since we are in the business of education and promoting students to a 90% graduation rate and successful life. So I think we need to make sure that we envision this and communicate it in a way that when we do talk about it and understand that their customers are outside of the classroom as well. We are a board of directors, and we have shareholders of us, who in most cases would be the community, the province, and if we're not responsive to those needs, those comments, that's not customer service as well. I think we need to be cautious, I guess, when we look at expectations and what's deserved. I think regardless of whether an individual has an expectation, the comment that the Chair Petersma said, well, I wouldn't expect anything else, I think is where he was coming from. There are different levels of expectation from each individual, and if we hang our hat on what's deserved, it's very easy to be trapped and say, well, that person is a real pain in the, so they don't deserve this. We need to be careful in that aspect. I think from a customer service aspect, we need to make sure that it's the expectations. And they may be painful for us at times, but customer service is about making sure that you meet the needs and the requirements of those individuals, whether they be students, whether they be parents, whether they be community at large. So, we've done some work, but I think there's more work to do. From a cultural standpoint, I think it's imperative. I think as trustees, we all have similar stories to Chair Petersma, and those are the things that we need to work on, because in order for us to be successful and be a board which parents choose to send their children to, for us to make them our customer, we need to make sure that we're responsive to those needs as well. So I think we need to make sure on the messaging, we look into that a little further and fine tune it, wordsmith it, whatever we want to do to make sure it gets out in a right way, so that we don't look at it and stop simply by saying, well, we've done enough.
Trustee McCray?
One element I think we need to consider is what I call the silent customer. And those are the people that are feeling slighted but don't say a lot about it. And I think one way of gathering that information is something as simple as having in each of the schools a customer, if you want, you can call it a service excellent box, where there's a little tick-off system, and they can write their comments on that. And if you want further information, if they feel like they want to say it, they can leave their name and their number or their email address. Because I think there's a lot of people that they just won't complain, they just won't say anything, they'll just go with the flow.
Okay, thank you, Trustee McCray. I'm just going to insert a question from Carol at this point. Is the cabinet continuing with the plan to train all future new employees about the service excellence plan?
I'm not sure about the, through you, Chair Petersman, I'm not sure about the term cabinet, but there certainly is a commitment in this charter, as David alluded to, as Director Thomas alluded to, that we're committed to training or learning for all employees in our school board. And again, there are levels to that training. There may be some basic training that all would be involved in, and then there might be role-specific training, because we can't forget that sometimes people don't deliver what we'd like them to deliver because they don't know how to deliver what we're asking them to do. So we're very committed, and that will be very extensive. The content is currently being prepared, and that will be the work that I leave behind for Sarah.
Okay. Trustee McAllister?
Through you, Chair. Superintendent Lumsden, you've done a lot of work on this, and I know that there's a lot left to be done. There are areas where parents in the community and schools intersect. And as Chair Petersman alluded to, one of them is registration of students right from day one. The other would be student orientations, graduations, discipline cases, crisis in the school, barbecues, fundraisers, projects, etc. You mentioned Peter Drucker, but a number of us on the board have been doing some specific reading with regard to Kaplan and Parmenter and Collins and key performance indicators and key result indicators. you mentioned that you imagine the Upper Canada District School Board in 2017. I'm hoping, is it your plan to be much more specific in terms of what that plan will look like in terms of expectations and how we're going to get there? And how we are going to deal, I'd say primarily, initially at least, with the people on the front lines. Because that is where the contact with the community and the parents is.
I'm gonna start with the director.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Mr. McDonald, you're dead on. This is about the rub between, the friction between the relationships. I've walked into schools, and hundreds of them throughout North America, and some I've left going, wow, wow. Because you say, I'll give you one example. I raced in one day into North Grenville. I was there to go to see the principal really quick, and I have a master key. I think it works on most schools, but it does in North Grenville. Not sure about the new North Grenville, but it worked. Came in the back door running in, said to a student, where's your principal? I said, how do you get to this is the school with all the staircases everywhere. What's the best way to the office? And the student, one of those long-haired, artsy guys and really neat kid, he said, before I tell you, why don't I just walk you there? He almost grabbed me by the arm, big, tall, 6'2" kid, and took me right to the office, and then he said, have a great day. I said, wow. I went in and saw Steve. I said, this is guy out here. I'd never expect this. I was listening to the school, walking me straight over there, asked me what I was up to, what I was doing. Nearly asked me why I had a key for the school, I think. I said, he's just a wonderful kid. But then you walk through into the office, and you have Rhonda McNish, and she treats you. And I know that you're supposed to hit the director up really well, but I sort of sense that every person who goes in that school has a wow experience just like me. And so when I was getting those wow experiences, some schools I don't get a wow experience. I don't get that one where you sort of leave at the end of the day saying, I wonder why I feel so crappy. You know, this just was not a great experience for me as you go through. And I started to say to myself, could there be something that this school does different we should expect from the school as well? Or should we just say, oh, that's what you get. You go to this school, that's what you get. You go to this school, this is what you get. And I disagree, because if you take a look at the work I've done in this, which was very minor compared to what was it? We have now key performance indicators for banks. This is how the public's be treated when you walk in. Whether it's a cold walk in to deal with a mortgage or get a loan, or you want to set up an account, there are some key indicators that there's some key things you have to do, 14 or 15 things that you can almost be checked on. This is how this person should be treated, and this is the beginning of a brand new relationship. I walk you into, and you guys have all done this, going to a hotel for the first time, you go up to the cashier. Hello, I'm Craig. How are you? Where are you from? How can I help you? Well, gee, because I want a really good hotel room that's really clean and the best rate you can. Well, sir, let's just talk about all the ways you can save some. Do you have your AAA card? Do you have this card, this card? And at the end of all the games, and why don't you grab an apple down there on the way as you're going through, there's your room, and how anything else I can do to help you in your stay. And then you get in your room, the bags, just get in your room, and a phone call from the same kid saying, did everything work out okay? Are you trying to find out what I'm up to? What are you doing here? You know, just, I hope you have a great stay with us, and thank you very much. Well, I go that hotel to that hotel. I sort of think maybe this can be taught. Now, I'm not sure if some of you are old enough to, or young enough to work at McDonald's or whatever, but McDonald's puts you through, and Ian told me this, 18-hour training course on how to treat the clients and the public. Our kids who go there at 16 and 15 have more customer relations training than our teachers would ever get, or our frontline people who you've just addressed. We do nothing to teach people this is how they answer the phone, or we go through. Because right now, if we take a look at some of our most courteous and well-run places, it's always had a history that way. Somewhere along the way, someone set a culture in the place that this is how we treat people. And so as you spoke about, John, that relationship, and going down, we're going to create, first of all, I said to Linda, we can't sort of create a test and not teach anyone. So let's teach them all first, Linda, what good looks like. And then let's test them. And one of the things you're going to see that I hope we have the guts to do as a key performance indicator, is that where I'd like to take this to, is the the shopper goes in. We hire two people who are going to go through 10 schools for us in the course of a week, going to register Johnny, their little Johnny, and say, what was your experience like at these 10 schools? And let's give them real feedback on what happened with that mystery shopper who's looking for a school. When we get to that level, but as I said to Linda, we can't go there now because we'd be testing people on something we never told them they had to do. And so when we move to this level, that's going to be where we want to have a wow experience in our school. I'd like to think that that experience I had at North Grenville, which has been repeated, by the way, I went to Glengarry, well, it's actually a very similar experience one day, in the parking lot, looking for a parking spot. I'm not sure what was going on in the school that day, whether it was basketball or whatever. There was no way, place to park. This young man going, he said, down there, right over there, there's a couple spots over there, and so forth. And I just realized that the school, sort of, if you deal with the people in the office there, from Guy, your principal, all the way through, they don't want you to pick their school for one day. They want you to pick your school forever. And then my final piece is you take a look at the car services now, General Motors. They now have got back to something they did 50 years ago. If you're watching the training that they're going through now with all the people who work for them, we don't sell a car to you, we sell a car to your family for the rest of your life. We want you to buy your first car, your second car, your third car. When that first car that you buy, John, is 5 years on, we want to give it to your daughter. And then when she can buy a car, we need to buy that. Because they realize now is that when you're selling something, really what you're doing is you're selling yourself and your relationship. It's not about names and stuff like that. It's about that relationship that you develop. And the great teachers, and we know there's many great teachers around here, they didn't treat the kids like they were customers. They treated them even better. And I have some teachers who I wish they'd just treat them like customers now, and then find that lovely look behind their eyes next, because they can go, so, and I know the vast majority, as I already said, the vast majority of our people treat those kids as if they're their own. They love them deeply, but at least treat them like the best possible customer you can as you go through. As we go through, so I would say there's going to be key performance indicators, but we're not at a stage where we can test them because we haven't taught them yet. I want to think we're going to move to that. Wow.
Okay, Trustee McPherson.
My hope is that this will change a lot by 2017. Just a question on, I'm not sure how to word this, the role of the trustee. Right now, if I get a phone call from a parent, I will bet dollars for donuts 90% of the time that it's somebody that has had a bad experience dealing with us, and they turn to the duly elected public representative to either soothe their wounds or to guide them down the proper path. So, given that we're not the frontline worker, obviously, but this is like somebody coming into the hardware store and saying, I need to speak to the manager. What role will the trustee play in the future? Like currently, if I get a complaint, I kind of chase it back down the pipeline, and hopefully it's fixed when it comes back out the other end. Is this going to enhance or create another avenue of solution for the trustee?
Superintendent Lumsden, in your investigation or readings, did you come across any organizations that had governance boards like ours, and see any information on how the governance board fit into this?
I've turned to Sarah, but I can't think of any. We did connect with some school boards in the U.S. In one board in particular, trustees were involved in some of the, they had gone to a conference together that was focused on service excellence, so they were getting some of the information at the same time, but I didn't see that it had changed the role of the trustee. That was not apparent to me in any of those school boards.
Director?
The governance piece was quite interesting to take a look at, through you, Chair, to Mr. Trustee McPherson. I think we're looking for an example right now with governance would be the hospitals, and some hospitals are a little further ahead than we are as a board with the training of the governors of the hospital board as part of the training in their role of sort of. But I guess where I'd be looking for is because we're out there in a new area, and there's the board in Minneapolis that
Was
you've been working.
Janesville, Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, Wisconsin, right? And they really they're out there in a fresh area themselves, and I think they've trained all of their trustees and their chair. The piece that's interesting in talking to their CEO is the fact that she said to me in the conversation we had was that she's gone in and dug into our board's website and all the things. She said what she'd have started with is something we started with that she didn't, was our character education program. And I think with our character education program, that's been more or less, this is how we want to treat each other. This is the character for the moment. Now the expectations is that here's the character, respect, kindness, courage, all the things we have up there with generosity. Now, what's it look like in our behavior with one another, as Linda's drawn it out, this is what it looks like now when you pick up the phone. This is what it looks like when you treat the student or the parent or the person, perhaps it's someone coming in to work in the building, whether it's an electrical organization or the roofer. So what do they leave with as their opinion of that particular school? Because everyone leaves talking about it. Do they talk about it the way that we want them to? But I think there's several hospitals out there that are doing a really good job with this. And to you, through the chair, Art, is that they've even moved away from calling them patients or whatever to calling them clients, because when you're sick again, they want you to return here as you go through. I think they've looked at this as in the hospital sectors, that we don't look at this someone sick that we've got to get better. It's someone that we're serving in our community, and we want their family to have a good experience with us as they go through. And I know that they have had quite a debate over, well, how do you call them a client? Do we really treat patients better than we treat clients? And I know in talking to one of the CEOs of the hospitals, in their movement towards this particular model that we're picking, is that they've had quite a semantic battle over patient or client, or what really is a client, because you have a patient, but you have the sick woman, but her husband's right there, so which one is the patient? And what they've come to discover is that they're really, the whole family is a client to the hospital, so let's treat them with dignity and respect so they return here and feeling good about the service and the way they've been treated right here at this particular place.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair. Linda, I think if we keep going, we'll be able to get you to retirement tonight. Just listening to the discussions. Since we started this journey, my eyes became very open to service outside the board. And everywhere I go, whether I'm at the grocery store, I'm at the bank, or I'm at a hotel, or paying for my gas at a gas station, I pay close attention to what the people are doing and what they're saying and how they're treating me. And my eyes have really been open since we started this journey. For some of our employees, this will not be a huge shift, because, I mean, I look at the people sitting at the back of this room. We've got some of the best sitting back there, and I know that their schools are a school that's built on strong relationships with not only their staff and with their students, but with their community. I had the privilege myself of working with, here in Brockville, with some of the finest office administrators that I have ever known. Two of them ended up here, and the relationships that they had with not only the staff, but with the kids and with the parents, the front line relationships were amazing. So for some of our employees, this will not be a huge shift because they're already doing it. What I really want, what I'd like to see at the end of the day is people not talking the talk, but people walking the talk. I want to see people that are actually not just spouting out a company line, but are actually genuine and real in terms of their relationship with everyone that they're dealing with. Because we've all been in those hotels where the employee spouts out the company line and we know it's not real. And for us, in the business that we are in, we're in the people business. It has to come from the heart, it has to be real. And I know that when you treat anyone with respect and they know that it's coming from your heart and your soul, there are no problems because they trust you so much. So I'm just hoping that at the end of the day that yes, we do have standards that we expect, but that they are coming from the right place for the right reasons. And I thank you so much for what you've done. You've certainly made me pay close attention to what's going on around me, and there's some good customer service out there. There's some bad, but we've got some amazing people already doing this, and it's only gonna make us better, so thank you so much.
Okay, I'm gonna ask another one of Carol's questions. When I see this many questions, I automatically think it must be John's list, but he must have, John's resolution must have been to only ask one question per agenda item this year or something. Disappointing me. Step it up, John. Okay, some feedback was submitted about the webinar I held, Carol held in Ward 10, and there were some questions asked and some comments made in regards to moving forward with this plan. I see no evidence of any comments made that were not altogether positive in the report. Were there other negative comments expressed that were not reported in this document? Carol realizes that we are to focus on the positive, but were all comments positive in the responses?
I'll give you an example that's in the report. And again, I think it's always a challenge when you start to talk about the word positive, that sometimes there's assumption that if you approach a change with a strength-based or a positive stance, you won't get any negatives. I'll read one of the comments from one of the parents in the report. And although we asked from a positive lens, she really is giving us what I would see as corrective action. And this parent says, I'd like to see consistency in processes for all schools, registration, course curriculum planning, consistent access to all opportunities and resources at all schools, and all staff trained in customer service. So although we asked to imagine the future and we had a positive frame, when people look to the future and they have a desire for something to happen, what comes next is and what I read in this statement is, she's aspiring to something that she doesn't see now. So you can call that a negative, a positive negative, but we did receive those kinds of comments.
Okay. I have a question that's rooted to some extent in my non-board experiences. When I look at the report, to be frank, I struggle a little understanding how this gets translated. And I understand that there is a difference in experience or in operating a large organization versus something where my experiences are based on that's much smaller. However, I still, when I look at other large organizations that are noted for customer service, I see more direction. I see culture building, which is what I suspect this is, but I see more direction. So more statements that we want the logo on every document that leaves the building. We want the following greeting used when when somebody contacts. Those types of things. I'm not necessarily finding maybe the best examples, but those types of expectations. Maybe I've missed where that comes in or how that fits in, but I would have expected to see more of that this is what we expect as an organization, and then foster the culture to support that, but still start off with expectations and then build to there.
Through you, Chair Petersma, I guess this to me is you go slow to go fast, and those are going to come. I foresee them coming, but we were very strategic about building this change with the people in the organization, and that means you go slower. When you bring people out, when you ask their opinions, when you help them to build it with you, you also build commitment. One of the things, it's only about 5 minutes, we're going to end with a video, which is basically some of the staff who were involved in this initiative, who are basically talking about what they've learned and what's important to them and the changes they're already making. Now, again, they're making those changes because they're committed to the changes, because maybe they're making them voluntarily, but we have something positive to build on, so that when we move forward to say, we are building a culture of service excellence, this is what our people told us it should look like. So what does it mean when we have the qualities above and beyond, individualized care? What's that going to look like? So we would foresee, for example, that when we're looking at learning for office administrators, there are going to be office administrators at the table. They're going to be involved in the training so that we can have people who are committed. I mean, ultimately, our employees do have to comply. But we believe that if we build the commitment initially, that we can have more people who do the work because they're committed to the standards that we're saying we must have in the organization, that the people we have to use compliance with are a small number. So it's been a very strategic way to roll this out, to build from across the system, bringing in lots of people, getting their input, getting their commitment. But absolutely, if it doesn't result in this is the way things need to be around here, it won't have been successful. And those things are yet to come.
Okay, I have one final question from Trustee Karkner. And it is, are we free to share this report with our school councils at this time, parent councils? And I assume since we're in public, you are.
Through you, Chair, we have a draft on it, and that was just to protect the 6,000 edits we seem to be making over the last few weeks. But I do think it's at the stage where I think we've got every last typo, and it can be out there and shared with councils.
Okay, and what are we going to see next?
What you're going to see next, and again, Sarah will be taking this over, is that you're going to start to see there's going to be an official liaison with the different departments, because there are suggestions that have been made. I know if I look at facilities and IT, already there are some things that they are embarking on. One of the things you may have heard Jeremy say at the table was that, Superintendent Hobbs say at the table was that, when we have we want to really look at making our entryways more welcoming, because that is one of the things that we've heard, is that if you really want to have an organization that is excellent in service, their very first impressions are not only the people, but also the physical. So that's one. So each department's going to look at what are the things that they're going to own and what are the things that they're going to begin to work on. Secondly, again, the learning. And that's something that will be worked on in the next while. Again, looking at something that's going to be web-based, but web-based exciting is our aim. And again, what is going to be, I would foresee that there would be learning that would go across the system, which would basically be, what does it mean if Upper Canada has a culture of service excellence? What's that look like? And then there would be some other levels of learning that would be very specific. It's quite ironic, really. I was cleaning some things in my office, and I happened to pick up a session that I did with office administrators 10 years ago on how to deal with difficult people. And again, it was the skills very much that we need to continually use with our employees, and there are some very specific skills that our office administrators need beyond how to use ESIS and those kinds of things, and we haven't done that for a while.
Okay, all right, thank you very much for your report.
And I'd love to show you the video. It's only 5 minutes.
Go ahead and
Okay,
show the video.
I'm just going to try clicking here.
All right, on that.
When I think about our vision for service excellence, one of the things that has come up over and over again for me is all means all. And we've sort of come to apply that from originally being an inclusive learning type of tagline to an entire employee customer service tagline.
It's really, for me, all about end user thinking and really connecting to what I'm doing personally as a kindergarten teacher, which is really, there's been a big shift in the last few years of taking it all from being all about us and really shifting it to being all about what the children need, the students, and really bringing that forward and letting them guide us in their learning.
I think operational excellence, that everybody knows the role that they have to play, no matter what their role is in the school. It means that they are there to serve the students and the parents of the community, and that everybody's role matters.
I think the culture of care, because, and looking at the end user thinking, that when I'm dealing with a student and a parent or any of the public coming in, that I'm thinking about start to finish. What are they coming in for, and what do they want to leave with? And to leave them with a good vision of what our school is and what service excellence is.
I have been focusing on the servant leadership, and that is because I like the word holistic. The word holistic crops up in the quote that's contained on our wheel, and I find that in as much as we need to focus on, obviously, the reading, writing, arithmetic, all those important areas. If you focus specifically and only on one section of a child, you don't get the entire being.
The collaboration and communications spoke of the will for our vision. It really speaks to me because it's essential.
And the whole piece about servant leadership, that just doesn't apply to administrators or managers. It applies to each and every one of us. And I think that's something, too, that service excellence has brought to light, that we all can serve. We can all help each other.
The impression that I give to children or parents when they walk through that front door and meet me for the first time has a huge impact on their choice of schools and how they feel about the culture of the school itself.
What it all comes down to when that child goes home every night, and not only you as a staff member, you went home and you're, wow, I've actually made a difference in somebody's life today, and then that student goes home and tells their parents, or that student feels like they've accomplished something and you've helped build upon that on a daily basis. So that's a big thing. The end user thinking is what makes a big difference in terms of making us not only the best, but unforgettable on everything.
I think in my day-to-day routine, it's changed my lens a little bit. I think more about service excellence.
I think that what I've noticed is that we are having more deliberate conversations around what it takes to do things better, and always reflecting on what we as a staff can do to do things better for our students and for our parents.
I've noticed a different, myself, I've noticed that I felt different, and I've been pushing it on pushing it on other people so they feel different, from a negative to a positive all the time.
I have noticed how much farther ahead our board is than other boards.
Well, I've been paying a lot more attention at my school to customer service and just observing how our staff act with parents and students and seeing a lot of great things, definitely.
I've noticed conversations taking place because I've posted the wheel with the spokes on it at the bulletin board above my desk, and the water drop, and as well as my little spinner on the desk. So conversations have been taking place in the office about service excellence. And I've also noticed that better service to our students by the office staff, because as we're talking about it, we're providing that service to students that are at risk when they come to the office.
Well, I've noticed in my school that I've had a different attitude when I arrive, when I'm at school, when we're in a staff meeting.
After attending the first meeting of our group, I came away with the feeling of how important it was for different groups within the board to support one another and to create a positive image within the school of the various departments, whether it be human resources or transportation, but to be positive about all groups, to our families and within the staff.
Since joining, it really consolidates our goal of the 90% graduation rate, and having that little tagline, 100% satisfaction with the educational journey, really consolidates for all of us why we're here, why we do business, and what our goal is here at the Upper Canada.
And
right,
thanks to Alison Grange for her help with that.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you, Linda, for your work on this and pioneering this adventure for us. And certainly, we will hold Sarah to the very high standards going forward. Director?
First of all, thank you, Linda. And I know on January 18th, Friday night, we'll be able to really say what we want to say. I'm going to say a few things at the end of this meeting. The chair gives me an opportunity. But just to wrap up on this segment, when we began this part of the journey, I said to Linda, if we get into the how or the where too fast, and we don't spend time on why we're doing this, we'll miss the boat. You see, I think at the TD Bank, they do this because they want their customers to stay and they want their money to stay. And we're not doing it because we're trying to put lipstick on a pig. That's not what this is about. This is really about the fact that we recognize that we're not the only dog in the show. That we have the Catholic Board, we have the Eastern Ontario French Catholic Board, we have the French Board, we have the Algonquin Board. We have private decisions that parents can make. Would they pick us if they didn't have to pick us? Now, I'd like to think they would. And I think what we've started to understand is that the why has to be at the center of what you're doing. The how and the where will come, and that's what's going on right now. Because how, we're all going to go through this. Everyone's going to have the training, just like we have to go through our police screening. You're going to have to go through this training, or you don't get a paycheck. And then finally, what we have to realize is, when is it most appropriate to have it? It's when the person's ready. And so if you're having the specific training as a teacher, it might be different training than if you're an accountant working in Rick's department who's serving the system. And all of the trainings that differentiate and rolls out will make this a better organization. And finally, as two of the teachers spoke about, I think what Linda has been doing, though, is also working on the special thing called your heart, when a young man can say, this just makes me a better person. To me, that's the wow. Because that's not about client or customer. That's about me saying, well, I can look at the world in a different way and take it on. Now, interesting enough, as we become even better at this one, if you're with the Bank of Nova Scotia right now and they have their secret client go in and do this, and the person gets their rating almost, I believe, within 90 minutes of the visit. They'll get a phone call back from the bank, and the vice president will get this, and you'll get feedback on what the performance of your bank. That would be critical feedback. An interesting thing, what they do is they attach bonuses to this, like, here's a $500 bonus because you did the following. Well, we can't do that, but what we can do is that the one young man said, when you see a child's life change, because you saw the potential in them, was wonderful. And I think that this is going to be very important, because what this is talking about why we do what we do every single day, and why we want people to leave with that wow type of experience. And I like to think it's got a whole lot to do with why we chose this profession and why we're in it as we go through and take a look at it. 1 in 7 people will complain about what's happened to them. Only 1 in 7. They call it the 7-7 principle. And in television or on the radio, if something goes the wrong way and you're offended, 1 in 777 may call in or send an email saying that was really dumb. But the fact is, what we're trying to get to that point where we realize it's the other 777 who perhaps won't complain. We're trying to say your journey with us is really important. So I look forward to this going, and I think, Linda, you've set a real good foundation. I think it's going to be a solid foundation that we can go on. Thank you.
So that's the secret in getting you to stop talking, is to activate the frog in your throat. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And all right, trustees, with your, I'll need unanimous consent to add a private session to the meeting. We have been told that our crack team working on our response for Friday is ready. With your consent, I would like to move into private session. So we'll start with seeking to add an item to the agenda. Moved by Trustee McMillan, seconded by Trustee Garrow. Welcome back, everyone. We're now moving to the labor update item, and this is an expansive topic. And Trustee McAllister, you indicated that you were, but I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with our response to Friday.
Okay.
So if you want, you can stay for that, and then we'll move to the other piece. As everybody is aware, we received notice today that ETFO, in our Elementary Teachers Federation, has indicated that they are going to stage a walkout on Friday. This will affect all of our elementary schools and the intermediate sections of our high schools, but just the teachers only. Our administration has been working on a plan to for Wednesday, and I'm very pleased that Ian and his team are here now to give us an update on what the plan is for our schools, our elementary and intermediate schools on Friday.
So at this point in time, and thank you, Chair Peterson, at this point in time, we have made plans to safely supervise our schools on Friday. There's a precedent where we have earlier in December dealt with a walkout action where our schools remained open and our students safely supervised. So reactivating our plans and preparations to that end. So having auxiliary staff available to support and assist our schools as necessary. We're in the process of preparing a public communication, a media release that will be sent out shortly, communicating our intention and the scope of our plans to our parents and community. We will, in addition, be developing subsequent communication that will be issued to our employees, outlining our expectations of them under the terms of our current labor situation.
So if I could just add then, so the plan would be, you know, from the trustees, the parents' perspective is that parents will have to make a decision on whether they will choose to keep their students home, much like we had in the last strike day. So that'll be a decision that parents will make, but we will be asking parents that that intend to send their kids to school to communicate that to their school as soon as possible tomorrow.
If I may comment, we were extremely well supported last December by our parent community in communicating their intention to us. They did so promptly and accurately, and it really assisted us in being able to make plans that were responsive to the needs of our schools.
Any comments or questions? Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair, just to clarify, the possibility is that something may happen on Friday, and you said that communication will be sent to our employees.
Yes, that's correct.
What is our expectation of our employees this Friday?
Well, the expectation is that employees report to work and do their duties as assigned and fulfill their obligations under their collective agreements.
So go ahead, Trustee McPherson.
Any indication what kind of response we had the last time? Like what percentage of kids actually showed up?
Less than 5%.
Less than 5%.
Now, the walkout is going to impact which of the employee groups that work at our intermediate and elementary schools?
We're specifically referring to our classroom teachers, our special education teachers. We have a number of staff who are not impacted. Educational assistants, early childhood educators, those staff are not affected by this.
So custodians, the principals,
office administrators.
Trustee McCray?
Through you, Chair. In regards, you mentioned our special education, are we in a position to accommodate our children with special exceptionalities?
Yes, we are. And in having this prior experience, that was a priority, that we ensured that students that required intensive staff supports would have those supports available to support their learning.
Okay, any other, Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. I think it's, as much as it is similar, it's a little different than the last disruption before Christmas. This disruption is a little quicker than the last one. I think we had 72 hours. This one is into the 48-hour. I think it's a good maneuver for us to make sure that we're communicating to our parents as quickly as possible. And I can say we've made that statement, that decision. But I want to commend our schools. Most of our schools' Facebook pages have had information out there already, saying that something is happening. So I think it's important that we continue that open communication with our parents, and being as quickly, acting as quickly as possible. So I think it's good for us to do that. Comments that I received from parents as a result of the schools being open despite having a disruption in service before Christmas was very positive. I think our communities, our parents looked at it as something that was done in order to help offset some of those issues about being a parent in a community and not being able to find alternate care, being a single parent, those types of situations. And I think it was very well received by our communities. And as we said, most parents did find alternate care, but certainly it was, I think, welcomed by those parents that did find alternate care, that we had the option for them at least.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair, I'm disappointed that our parents and our students are put in this position again. But I have complete confidence in our ability to handle this situation. We've proven it in the past. As Trustee McDonald said, the comments from the public were very positive in the way we dealt with this situation in December, and our confidence to be able to handle it again is certainly there. It's certainly disappointing that we have to have the student go through this again.
Okay. All right, Associate Director Carswell, you and your team want to get back to working out the details. So thank you very much for providing us the update. In terms of communication, we will have a press release tonight. You will have communication through schools tomorrow, and we strongly encourage parents to keep bookmark studentsfirstalways.ca, and we'll be using that to channel information, up-to-date information. Very proud of our stance. I think this is where we really push social justice to the forefront, and I'm very proud of the fact that we are able to do this on such short notice. So thanks very much, and you guys better get to work.
Yeah,
thank you. Okay, we'll move on with our labor update. Trustee McAllister declared conflict for a good portion of this. We'll come and get you when we're ready to talk about the extracurricular. Superintendent Patterson, you want to give us a little bit of an update, overview of your written report?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair Petersma. Perhaps I can preface my comments. I sent a draft of this report to Chair Petersma about noon hour today, and of course, some hour and a half later, we received information regarding ETFO and the political protests. So, of course, that was also a very pertinent piece of the negotiation update, which Associate Director Carswell has already addressed. So I just wanted to ensure that the trustees were fully apprised of the developments as it relates to the imposition of collective agreements for our teachers and related unions, and also the memorandum of understanding that has been developed between the provincial government and the Canadian Union of Public Employees, CUPE, which requires ratification by the locals by mid-January. And I would just like to take the time to identify some of the specific changes to the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that was developed for OECTA, and any of the variations that we'll see as a result of the imposition of the collective agreement. So basically, there were 3 regulations that came into force on, came into force on January the 3rd, and they in turn impact the content of the collective agreement. This morning at Strategic Council, we shared in detail these changes in a 6-page chart. So I hope you appreciate that you're receiving the executive summary, but I would certainly be happy to share further information with anyone should you so wish. The terms of the collective agreements are essentially, it's a 2-year term, 2012 to 2014, and essentially, unless there's been agreement on local matters, the existing 2008-2012 contract would simply roll over with the exception of anything that is reflected in regulation needs to be in the collective agreement. So I'll just highlight some of those things. Of course, no salary increase for the next 2 years for any board employee. And grid movement, as you know, by virtue of years of experience or qualifications, teachers enjoy a grid movement, and it's on an annual basis. Not so now. In fact, the grid movement will take place on the 98th day. That's 97 days after the first day of school. So essentially, teachers will benefit from half of a year increase by virtue of their experience. In order to achieve that, what teachers, principals, vice principals will be required to take 3 unpaid days in the second year of the agreement. Not this current year, but in 2013-14, they will be required to take 3 unpaid professional leave days on professional development days. Non-teaching staff, somewhat different, and employees on contract who do not bargain collectively and earn less than $100,000 will take one unpaid day in 13-14. The short-term leave and disability plan has changed significantly from what we knew in previous years, but it's actually fairly similar to what was presented in the OECTA MOU, with a couple of exceptions, and I'll highlight those. Essentially now, employees of the board have 10 sick days funded at 100% of the employee's salary, and then they can continue with another 120 days at 66.67% of their salary. That being said, if they can, if through an adjudicative process, it can be demonstrated that the illness is such that they should be paid at 90%, that will be put into effect as well. So we will operationally need to establish an adjudicative process in order to accommodate that. The change from the MOU that we originally knew to be the case, the OECTA MOU, is that we are now in the position where employees can carry over unused sick leave credits to top a 90% day to 100%. So if you didn't use your sick leave last year, you can carry over those days in order for top up. So it just takes you from 90% to 100%. You cannot accumulate days beyond 1 year. So this is not a case of where in the past we would accumulate year over year. That's not the case. It's just you can take it and use it in the following fiscal year. The next two that I want to share is basically just is 100% salary for 6 weeks for those who are on maternity leave, and also our top up for Workplace Safety and Insurance Board to 100% salary. We currently do that. We have in past agreements, and of course now we are required to do so by virtue of regulation. Significant change in retirement gratuities. As you may be aware, in the original MOU, all credit and salary for payout of retirement gratuity was frozen August 31st, 2012. That is still the case, and upon retirement, anyone who has vested service and is eligible will receive their retirement gratuity in years to come. The change is that for those employees in most groups where they have less than 10 years continuous service, there is essentially a wind-up payment, if you will. They, by formula, receive a much smaller amount of money in recognition of their service between 0 and 10 years. And no employee will accumulate retirement gratuity after August 31st, 2012. So everything is frozen at that time. We do have some employees who enjoy the benefit plan that we have in the board upon retirement, and they can continue to pay into that plan. And so they benefit from a, if you will, a lesser rate because it's quite a large pool of people. That is going to, that will be honored if folks retire prior to September the 1st, 2013, but on or after September the 1st, 2013, employees will, if they choose to be in a plan, it will be segregated from the larger plans that the board has. I had mentioned earlier that the CUPE provincially agreed to a template agreement with the province that's basically looks like an MOU. And it's very similar to what I've just mentioned, some of those changes, with a few exceptions. Instead of 10 days of sick leave, the CUPE employees, if they in fact ratify the agreement, they will have 11 days at 100%. In addition, there is a reference to a protected complement, so this is to do with job security, and there is a established date at which time we will identify and agree that this is the complement, and unless there is catastrophic events or declining enrollment or funding reductions that relate to their job and the support that they provide students, we will maintain that security through the life of the agreement. So we would maintain the complement. Lastly, they have the ability, CUPE, if they, in order to pay for their grid movement, because clearly outlined to principals in particular and others that the collective agreements have been imposed and the expectation is the work tool is concluded and it's business as usual in our schools. And as you know, we continue to monitor the level of our extracurricular activities in our schools, and the information is posted on the Students First Always website. I just wanted to conclude with 4 considerations, and one of them is, as you will recall, the board devoted $300,000 to the cost of the job action, etc., that was related to negotiations 2012. And to date, our expenditures in that area have been $118,000, well, almost $119,000. So perhaps with the upcoming preparations for Friday, there may be more expenses incurred, and we probably don't have all of the expenses totaled at this time because much of the replacement costs come in on timesheets and rely on our employees. Trustees to have an opportunity to discuss is the government has begun a consultation process with education stakeholders to develop legislative and regulatory frameworks for provincial bargaining as early as 2014. And so the question, I think, would be what is the role of the Board of Trustees and local school boards as it relates to bargaining in upcoming rounds. Voluntary activities, certainly if you look at the EPFO or OSSTF websites, it's very clear that they're encouraging their members to make personal decisions to withdraw from voluntary activities. The first one that comes to mind, of course, is extracurricular, but there are also some administrative assignments at the school level that teachers volunteer to do. For instance, an example of that would be designated teachers in our elementary and in our secondary schools. And it certainly is a teacher's personal decision to volunteer to participate in these types of activities. But certainly it is our opinion that it's unacceptable for the union to direct its members to withdraw their services in any concerted manner. And lastly, as you will recall, in the job action prior to Christmas, some of our extracurricular activities were curtailed, and we actively, and the board endorsed, and we actively solicited volunteers from our communities to assist us in providing extracurricular activities for students. And this is that opportunity will continue to exist, I guess, in the future. And I think it truly is an opportunity and to engage our communities at a greater level than perhaps we have in the past, and to tap into the resources in our communities as it relates to providing a broad range of extracurricular activities for our students. So I leave that report with you, and if you have any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Before I take questions or comments, with these changes that have now been mandated that we do, it means that we have to conduct business slightly different in the way we have done from the past. Is there a cost factor to us as a board to make the adjustments to fit these changes into our system?
Through you, Chair, we have been working very diligently in the last few days trying to digest, as I mentioned to you earlier, the 6 pages of changes for all of our employee groups. Mm-hmm. And we met as recently as yesterday, the human resources staff and the payroll staff, to begin to analyze and obviously work on an implementation plan. There is a lot of tracking that is going to be required, and I think administratively there will be a significant load put on staff, particularly here at the board office, in order to implement the changes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I ask that because I think sometimes people are led to believe that when changes like this are mandated, that everything is just going to work automatically, and it's not. It's a huge adjustment, I assume. So I'm sure there's tons of work ahead of you. I'm going to pass this back over to our chair.
All right. Trustee McPherson, thanks. Trustee McLaren.
I've been receiving a fair amount of comment from my constituents, and while I have been doing my best to refrain from my comments, I would like to share with you some of the things that I'm hearing. Quite often when people use the word extracurricular, the automatic thing that pops up is sports. I'm not going to say sports aren't important, but extracurricular goes way beyond that. School bands, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm getting is a sense from my constituents that perhaps our school board has developed a sense of dependency upon in-house volunteerism to drive many of our extracurricular activities. And I think Charlotte's partly answered it, that we have to start looking at encouraging more community volunteers to help us deliver what we think is enhancement to our children's educational journey. There's a great many organizations that we could turn to for inspiration. Teachers have done a great job of being volunteers. Even when I was in high school so many years ago, I remember learning chess from a librarian that taught me how to play chess. So it's nothing new, but I think we have to lessen our vulnerability. We have to start seeking out the community. And it would be my hope that after that we'll start looking at our policies to encourage more community involvement.
Okay, any other, Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the confusion here is evident because local bargaining has been bypassed. I had two areas I wanted to look at. You mentioned the salary being curtailed. Now, I want to ask about that and about quality education and evaluation. If a teacher achieves an acceptable level of qualification regarded by us, say from, well, say a master's from one of my old schools at Carleton or Ottawa U, would this teacher be then eligible for an increase based on the new qualifications?
Through you, Chair, yes, if they provide us with the appropriate documentation,
Okay.
then on the 98th day, if they're entitled to a recognition of qualification, that would be the case.
Thank you. I had a second one, Mr. Chair, on evaluation. I don't see it in here, but was there something that now made teachers more in control of the evaluation process and even more reticent to release this to principals? And the other thing was the hiring of part-time teachers. Has that been dealt a deleterious blow?
Through you, Chair, there was reference in the OECTA MOU regarding diagnostic assessments, and it was teachers' role or professional responsibility to determine what they were and how often they would be implemented. We have recently received a PPM from the ministry outlining the requirements of diagnostic assessment. So while it's not in these changes, there's a separate PPM that deals with that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Trustee
The other
Buckland,
thing
I
was,
don't
is
recall
it,
your third one.
yes, has the management right been dealt a deleterious blow in the hiring of part-time teachers in the new contract?
Again, through you, Chair, Regulation 274 continues to exist, and it essentially guides the hiring practice of occasional and, well, particularly long-term occasional and contract teachers into the board.
Thank you.
Trustee McAllister?
With regard to extracurriculars, obviously it's our hope, at least it's my hope, that eventually teachers and the government will resolve the issues that separate them at the present time, such that teachers will want to return to the extracurricular activities that their time and commitments permit. And I don't with the flavor here that perhaps there is a need for more community involvement in our schools in terms of some of these extracurriculars. But let us be very cognizant of the fact that there are many activities that cannot be done by community members, and that really can only be done by teachers. So if we are going to go down that route, I just suggest that we proceed really slowly and pick off certain things that we think that we can do well.
So what are you thinking of?
I'm thinking of, for example, teacher-led excursions, field trips. Usually, even though there is a curriculum component, some are not.
Right.
And I think it's absolutely necessary that you have a teacher involved in that. That's one suggestion, one idea anyway.
So what is the, I'm sorry if I missed this when I was out, so what is your vision for how we're going to prepare ourselves to be less vulnerable to disruptions, to extracurricular?
First of all, it's a loaded question because I agree with John. The best person to be doing extracurricular and co-curricular activities are teachers in the school, because not only are they trained to do these things, but the spin-offs in their class and the relationships they have with kids and all the things that go with, if you're the band and you run the band and you have someone in your history class, because all of our teachers teach multiple subjects, it just spins off in very positive relationships in your school. So you don't want to give up on those. But the fact is that all of us know that appears to be a pattern since about the early 70s, that every 7 to 8 years, the kids are held hostage on this. This is what they tell me, and that they don't think this is right, and that a strike shouldn't be held against the kids. It should be held against the board and held against the ministry. One of the things we have to take a look at is that we, right now, our board already has hundreds of volunteers who do everything from basketball, volleyball to football. We have some programs with the entire people, we have canoe people, different people who are teaching our kids as you go through. But what I would say is that we're looking for in the future is probably a combination of volunteers and teacher volunteers in these particular circumstances. And I think what's going to happen if we continue to have situations where the students are made vulnerable by the federations, we're going to have more and more volunteers coming into our schools to take on events, asking the question, well, just because this is going on, does that mean I can't run my team? And what's going to happen is there's no reason why they can't have their team. I do agree with Trustee McAllister, or I think when you have a very complicated co-curricular activity with curriculum-related decisions, that's still going to be in the privy. If you an excursion to Bolivia, or you're going to take a class trip to France, to connect that, make it make sense with the teachers as you go through. And I've not seen a great, so far in my career, I've not seen a band teacher just sort of come into a community and say, I want to give 30 hours of extra work to a band. Very complicated volunteer services there. And those things, now we've had people, even as late as a couple of years ago, Tony Ada, where we had 2 and 3 teachers, former teachers, come back and do volunteer work, and we had that also in other schools. But again, they're coming back to give their time up. So I think it's going to be a combination of volunteers, it's going to be a combination of teaching, and what I would hope is that we come up with a better way of expressing our political differences than to say we hold it against kids. There has to be a different way of doing it.
Here, here. So, but I think there's an opportunity for us to, all right.
Blew him out of the room.
Chased him away. I'll save my comment. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Trustee McDonald, sorry.
I just wanted to comment. I believe that boards across Ontario, not just this board, have relied on teachers for some time to do extracurricular activities. And I don't know that we discourage. I think our policies don't discourage it. In fact, this has been something that's been ongoing for some time. We've been dealing with this for a number of years as a result of some contract talks in the past, and I think we understand that there are a number of activities in the school that are, in fact, that voluntary. I mean, I remember as a parent having my son wanting to go to École de Neige. That involves a tremendous amount of time from a teacher outside of the normal day to be able to go and do that trip, and that's the voluntary aspect, right? There is a degree, there is that part of the curriculum associated to it because of the French language aspect, but it's greater than the normal school day. It's greater than a 2-hour basketball practice. So I think we understand that. And I think there's been a number of activities that we've done over the past few years where we have encouraged outside expertise to come in and be volunteers, because we believe there is a benefit to our students. But to say that we rely on teachers only, I don't know that I agree to that, and I don't think that our policies discourage it either, so, the outside volunteers to happen. So we need to be careful of that. I mean, I'm respectful of the fact that we've got young teachers who have families themselves. I'm respectful of the fact that we've got teachers who are winding down their career, that they want to do other activities. I think communities in general have a hard time finding people to coach soccer teams or hockey teams or those kinds of things. So it's not an education problem per se, it's a community situation that we have to look at. So if we want to meet the needs of kids outside of the classroom, whether it be for music or whether it be for sports, we do have to embrace it as a board, but as a community. And I think we're doing that. We have examples of that, and I'm satisfied that what we're doing is meeting those needs. And unfortunately, there's things like this every 2 years or every 4 years that kind of come back and hit us over the head, but I'm satisfied with what we're actually doing right now.
I'd like to think that there's an opportunity here for us to, and I think that's what I'm hearing, Trustee McDonald. But on in many situations, we've taken a crisis and learned from it and made something better out of it. And I think that's the opportunity here. I mean, I agree that we should be supporting and encouraging as many teachers as possible. But the realization that, that relying on that may create a vulnerability, I think has caused me anyway to look at the whole issue and thinking, holy smokes, there's an opportunity here for us to really increase the capacity in every community by aggressively supporting, so that maybe it's an assistant coach that we're training that is a parent. Maybe it's not the coach, but it's an assistant coach. Maybe it's and we know that there are lots of activities, that very specialized activities that maybe we don't offer, that just by creating a culture that we are there to create, that we teach, that we expand our community's capacity, we might discover things that we never even thought of offering in our communities, in our schools. So I'd like to think that we'd be a little bit more aggressive and maybe even ask administration to maybe even go as far as creating a charter to look at how we would pursue this. It may be premature at this point. Maybe we need to do a little bit more exploration. But I'm thinking that it may be something that big for us. Trustee McPherson?
Just a question. I've got a nephew that is applying for post-secondary. How important is extracurricular activity to a student planning to move on to some of the, and what's happening is the more elite post-secondary institutions? Like, is the lack of extracurricular, I guess I'm going to put it that way, going to dramatically affect our senior students' chances of getting into post-secondary institutions where they would like to go? Is it going to have a major impact? I guess that's putting it as simple as possible.
Okay, can somebody help us? Director?
First of all, I'm not sure what faculty they've been going to, but I have done that interviewing for for a university where we're looking at for a program, a specific program. That was the concurrent education program at Trent University. And for approximately, I guess it was close to 10 years that I did that both as a vice principal and a principal. And certainly in that particular, we were given sort of 5 categories into you know, their academic background, their potential for teaching based upon their essays they had done and so forth as you go through. And then there was one portion where you're looking for the co-curricular related activities and their references. And so if you were looking to break a tie between, let's say, you know, 3 of the candidates wound up with 20 points, you go to that one there and take a look at it and say, gee, that's pretty impressive. The principal of the school said this, the junior B hockey coach said this as you go through. To me, that was always important. I was part of a 10-person team that went through and then we took them forward as you go through. I think it is important. I think more and more as you know, Trustee McPherson, is that you're hired for your skill set and you're fired for your attitude. There's no greater way to tell a person's attitude than to see how they performed in the band. How did they work out in the play? How did they do this? So I think when our students are worried about, I have nothing to report here. It's not just our fault. I mean, if I was a parent right now watching going on, I'd say make sure that, you know, my son or daughter was swimming or involved in a community-related thing where they're going to get a reference from some other source as you go through. But I think that the discussion around this table is so focused on students, and that's why we're so proud of the board. That's why I think we have to talk about it. So the idea, and I know that you already sent me a note on this, is that the idea of this getting a charter, because we know when it gets charter status, it gets supervised, it gets done. That's going to be something that you want to happen. I know if that was where the trustees will take this, say this should become a charter to change the culture of the organization. As you're going to go through, then I say that what we have to work on is, as Trustee McDonald said, is there a way to find that good balance? Is there a way that we can create, as the chair said, to take this negative situation and create something better because of what we've learned from it? So if you direct myself and the senior administration to move that way, I think that you'd find out that this is a horse we'd like to ride.
Trustee McCray.
Through you, Chair, I'd like to share a little bit of my background as a volunteer coordinator. You brought forward, you know, the notion of an opportunity, and there definitely is an incredible opportunity. I just want to warn our board, though, that when you go down that road, there's everything from, it can become very, take a lot of time and energy in terms of building an infrastructure for your volunteer service base. Everything from screening to writing job descriptions to who they report to. You have organizations like Volunteer Canada, Volunteer Ontario, the Professional Volunteers Associations, things like Service Excellence, all these types of things when you get into volunteer services. And I'm just not sure we have the resources, or that's something, another expectation we would want to put upon our other staff, let's say support staff within our organization. For an example, I work at the Alma General Hospital and I do volunteer services, and I'm given 2 hours a day to deal with 250 volunteers. It's a lot to cover. So I'm not sure. I think if you decided that you were going to use that as an opportunity, we would have to ensure that we set some parameters. And we want to make sure that we do, in fact, have the infrastructure to support our volunteers.
Okay.
It's not like it used to be, volunteer services. It's human resources.
Trustee Garrow?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I like the positive spin on this in the sense that out of a crisis, you know, you look at something that you could build upon, you know, from that. And I know that students themselves have to do community service, have so many hours, volunteer. And I think that's a strong indicator. A lot of the people from Akwesasne have had bad experiences with schools, residential schools, federal schools, or whatever. But during the crisis situation, when we do have to bring in, I know not to say anything against teachers, because teachers do a fantastic job, but being a strong indicator of how a community school is a community school is by having those people come volunteer, be part of the school, part of the community. And it has done that, you know, through a crisis sometimes. But it's almost, we're sending a message out to our students for community hours, if you want, volunteer in other areas. But it's also the idea of trying to bring people back into the education system that have probably been wronged by it.
Indicated earlier, I think we've got some things in place that allow that to happen. If you're saying that we want to encourage it more, then I don't know that we need to do that in a policy. I think there's a policy in place that says we do encourage it. What do you want to say? We strongly encourage it? I think.
No, I think that there's a difference though between encouraging and having a plan. That's all. That's what I'm suggesting.
But we don't know that it's an issue yet. We've got a, something that's put in place.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
I hear you.
And move forward.
All right. Trustee McAllister?
I fully agree with Trustee McConnell. I think that discussion is one for the future maybe, but it is premature at the moment.
Okay. Any other questions with regards to the labor update? Yep, go ahead.
Just a comment on these statements. I understand where you're coming from. But gee, it's the crux of the whole situation right now. It's what's got students upset. It's what's got parents upset. And yeah, we've got a plan, but we've got to look to and really nail this down. If we can put it off and put it off, but this is going to become an issue that's going to come up every time we have a labor situation. The first thing they're going to do is withdraw extracurricular, and I think it's critical to us as a board that, as the chair is saying, that we move forward in a positive direction. That's not saying we take it away from the teachers. I mean, the reality is, for any of us that have taught in an elementary system, it's only a handful of teachers that do all the extracurricular anyways. And those teachers, I mean, we've got a new sports organization going on right now, and when they have tournaments, they bring in professionals to help the coaches become better at what they're doing. That's a positive step in strengthening extracurricular. We're reaching out to the professionals to help our coaches. I know myself, when I coached, I wasn't a professional basketball player. I don't have the skills to teach that, but I coached it. Same thing with volleyball. So I think if we have an opportunity to discuss this, we need to bring it back. And it's not something that I think should be buried, because it is being used every time we negotiate. Every time we get into a situation as we have right now, politically, it's the first thing that is being pulled from as a job action. And we can't continue to move forward in the education system right now and always be held ransom on that issue.
So I think that what I'd like to say is this is not gonna go away. I can appreciate, let's give it a week and see what it looks like. I think David already is taking some action. Trustee.
I'd like to have the authority of the board behind us.
Well,
So,
let me suggest this, okay? Why don't we put this on a meeting, the next committee of the whole? That'll give us 2 weeks, we'll have a little better idea, and we'll talk about just that, and we can, at that point, make, I think, a better suggestion. Everybody okay with that? You okay with that? Whether you agree with the idea of doing it or not,
But what are we gonna make our decision based on? Whether we wanna expand?
let's talk about that then. Okay? I'm not asking for a report now. I'm asking, just, let's gain a couple weeks, let's see what happens, because right now, we really don't even have a clear understanding of what the reality is in our schools. In a week, it could change. So, that's what I'm suggesting. And unless there is a majority of people who want to give David direction right now, I'm not sensing that, I think that we should wait and then have the conversation. Okay? Anybody opposed to that? All right. So thank you very much, Trustee Superintendent Patterson, for your update. Just before I conclude, and I'm not going to allow comment on this, we've just been handed a press release from OSSDF indicating that they are, the bargaining unit at today's meeting has made a decision to support the withholding of voluntary and extracurricular activities. This is considerable in what we're talking about. Schedule a day of political protest for January 16th to be held if the government hasn't repealed, rescinded the order in council, and so on. Replace participation in voluntary or extracurricular by engaging in a public education campaign highlighting the loss of the right to freely bargain. And then they will reconvene a meeting of local bargaining union presidents to discuss next steps after the Ontario Liberal Leadership Convention. So I just spoke very quickly with David. We'll be working on a response to figure out how we're going to handle this, and we'll communicate that. And if need be, we may call an a special meeting to deal with that early next week, because this is the 16th is Wednesday. All right, thank you, everybody. I need a motion to move into regular, back into the regular meeting. Trustee McPherson, Trustee McMillan, all in favor? I think you can vote on this one. Maybe. Not letting me, but I'm in favor. Okay. Report from private session, December 19th. One contractual matter was discussed in private session. No recommendation was brought forward. Report from public session committee of the whole. One policy was discussed and recommendation brought forward on the to the board on December 19th. Okay, we also discussed the fact that we had noted that we had a number of people recognized with the Diamond Jubilee medal. We have worked very hard to try to establish a list, and we might have to send in our communication team to support the Queen's Diamond Jubilee organization, because their communication is almost non-existent. So we have pieced together a partial list, and I'd like to just recognize some of these people. We know that there are others that have tangential relationships with the board, and we've tried to establish that part of the reason they got the award was their involvement in education. And by no means do we have a complete list. So we apologize if we've missed anybody, but we did feel that it was necessary for us to recognize these people. So, winners of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award who were people who are connected with the Upper Canada District School Board include David Dargy, former trustee, Arlie Kirkland, retired principal, Jim Brunel, a retired teacher, Shirley Coons, member of school council, Mamie David, former trustee with SD&G and the Akwesasne board. Did I get that right, the name?
Yep, Mamie, that's it.
Okay. Gerald Sampson, former superintendent, Helen Tupper, member of school councils for IPS and Seaway, Dawn Mitchell, a retired teacher, Lauren Strader, who's part of the SD&G board, and last but not least, our own Peter Garrow.
Your underwear, or can you show it?
No, I don't. I've got, I should say that, but it's part of some type of, what do they call those? Piercing?
Okay, all right. I see. Too much knowledge. Okay, everyone, moving on. Report from Ontario Public School Board. Do you have anything to add?
What's the next conference?
That's pretty well it. There's not a lot of activity associated with UPSPA in the last little while, but there is a conference at the end of January, 26th, I believe, 7th, 25th, 26th maybe is where it is, Public Education Symposium in Toronto. There will be a regional meeting at that time as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Director McDonald. Remarks, Chair, Director.
First of all, the chair and I spoke about this earlier today, and spoke about it this evening as well. And I just know the principals are all watching this on our special website, and if they are, they should go to sleep. But I know a number do watch this as they go through. And to say we're proud of you is an understatement. We know the work that you have been doing over the last couple of months has been unbelievable. In our high schools, before the job action and before the potential strike situation, they were going, literally 17 hours a day, in early and leaving late. And now, again, with all the work that Ian's been involved with, and our principals at the elementary panel, we're very, very proud that they are building confidence in public education by saying, as the chair of the board said, social justice, we will remain open for all the right reasons, because that's what we're supposed to do. And they have taken what the board has asked them to do, and they have delivered a home run. So I'd like to personally go in the records of thanking our principals and our vice principals for their leadership, and that it has gone noticed by our board. And I'd like to thank the trustees who are sending notes and sending things. You'd be really surprised that on a rough week, when you've had a lot of things going on, and you get a nice note or a phone call from your trustee thanking you for the work. And I know you guys do it, because I get phone calls saying that was decent as you go through. So thank you for doing that. Your principals do thank you for that. And just as the senior team gets into the room, we will have an opportunity, as I said, on January the 18th to do something special. But Linda's retiring. I'm not sure what she's retiring to, because she looks way too young. It seems like every time I look down there, she's getting younger. I think the thought of retirement makes you younger as you go through. But I don't think you should retire. And I don't know why I accepted the letter. But Linda, I just wanted to say that I'll say this more eloquently on the 18th, if they give me a half an hour to speak. One I've always appreciated, I think the people who've worked with you here, is your clear understanding of yourself. people like that when someone knows themselves, their strengths and their weaknesses, and thank you for that. I think the other thing that really complements that is that anyone who's ever worked with Linda knows it's about the kids, stupid. You make every single decision based upon it's about the kids. Now smarten up. And when you do that, it's so easy to predict what the principal's going to say, and they're easy to work for that way when you keep it focused on the kids. She has a true understanding, too, of our system's why we do what we do. And I could never be more proud of the system I am tonight to see us again. When all the rest of the province goes one way and we say kids are first, Linda understands that, and that's because she understands the system why. There's a couple of other things that Linda does really, really well, and she does it when no one's watching in her character program, but she's built a culture around her and in her schools, and I had a chance to see it at Maynard. I had a chance to see that she worked in a brand new project with her cabinet was respect, acceptance, kindness, truthfulness. But not truthfulness in the sense that we're trying to catch someone like gotcha. Truthfulness is staying committed to the true spirit of what you're working on. And some people think truthfulness is to take it and whack them over the head with it. Truthfulness means staying on task and getting the job done. And I'd like to also thank you for your generosity. I know that you've been generous to the people around this table. And Linda, as you move to the next stage of your career, and there'll be more things for you to do, we know where you live. I've got your phone number. We thank you for being genuinely a hard worker. I think whatever happened in that family in Syracuse, the Italian girl in you gets the job done. And I think no father would be more proud of a person who says, I get the job done. We work with so many people, talk a great story, do all their stuff, but at the end of the day, what do? You go to the people who get the job done. And I think there's no greater gift for a mother or father to look at their daughter and say, God, she's a hard worker. And I think that's a compliment to you. And I also see it in your kids, and I think that's a reflection of you, as who you are. And then finally, I said this once before, and I'm going to sometime draw some tears out of you, is the fact that you're a really great mother. Congratulations. I know, I'll get the 18.
My husband should be here to say, don't remember any of this.
Well, thank you, Director, for that great tribute. There have been a lot of extra miles logged by all our staff in the last number of weeks, and I hope that we'll have time, Director, to go around and thank all our office administrators, everybody who has really stepped up and worked hard to try to keep our schools focused on the main thing. There also has been a status change at our table. This over the holidays, somebody's HR file needed to be updated, that they were no longer single but married, and I of course am referring to our director and Nancy Hanna, our principal at KPS, who tied the knot and over the holidays and are now a husband and wife. Yeah, I'm not sure who got, well, I know who got the better end of that deal. All right, motion to adjourn, Trustee McMillan, seconded by Trustee McPherson.